A quiet pressure follows many people through their daily life. It sits in the background of their decisions. It whispers before they speak, before they act, before they take a risk. This pressure comes from a belief that other people are constantly watching them. Many people walk through life with the feeling that they are being evaluated all the time. They believe others are judging their choices, their appearance, their words, and their failures. A person might hesitate to share an idea in a meeting because they think everyone will criticize it. Another person may delay starting a business because they fear what relatives or friends might say. Someone may avoid trying a new path because they assume people will laugh if things go wrong. The strange part is that this invisible audience rarely exists. The mind creates it. It builds an imaginary crowd that seems powerful and intimidating, but in reality, that crowd is mostly silent and distracted. Most people are not studying your life. They are not analyzing your every move. They are not replaying your mistakes in their mind. They are busy carrying their own weight. Their thoughts revolve around their own problems, their own responsibilities, and their own plans for tomorrow. Every individual wakes up with a list of concerns running through their mind. Some worry about their finances, some worry about their health, others think about family responsibilities, career pressure, or personal struggles that nobody else can see. When a person is surrounded by these concerns, they rarely have the time or energy to deeply analyze someone else's life. This reality is simple but powerful. The mind still resists it. The mind prefers to believe that attention is constantly directed toward us. This belief begins early in life. From childhood, people grow up in environments where attention feels important. At school, students receive praise or criticism from teachers. They become aware of how classmates react to their actions. Over time, this awareness slowly turns into sensitivity. A person begins to monitor themselves more closely. They begin to ask questions inside their mind before every decision. What will people think about this? What if someone judges me? What if I look foolish? These questions slowly shape behavior. Confidence becomes conditional. Action becomes cautious. The individual begins living inside a mental cage created by imagined opinions. Yet human psychology reveals something fascinating. The human brain is wired to focus primarily on the self. Survival throughout history required individuals to prioritize their own safety, their own needs, and their own environment. This natural self-focus never disappeared. It simply evolved into modern forms. People still think mostly about themselves. Their thoughts constantly return to their own experiences, their own worries, their own desires. This tendency leads to a powerful psychological illusion known as the spotlight effect. In simple terms, the spotlight effect is the tendency to believe that others notice us far more than they actually do. The mind places a spotlight above our head and assumes that everyone around us can see every detail of our behavior. But the spotlight rarely exists outside our imagination. When a person trips while walking in public, they may spend the rest of the day thinking about that moment. They replay it again and again in their mind. They assume that everyone who saw it remembers it clearly. In reality, the people nearby probably forgot about it within minutes. Their attention quickly returned to their own concerns. Another person might say something awkward during a conversation and then spend hours analyzing what happened. They may feel embarrassed and assume that others are discussing the moment behind their back. But the people in that conversation are most likely focused on their own thoughts, their own schedules, and their own next conversation. The human mind naturally magnifies personal mistakes. It places emotional weight on moments that others barely notice. This creates unnecessary fear. It prevents people from experimenting, from speaking honestly, and from stepping outside familiar routines. Opportunities disappear because the mind believes the spotlight is real. This illusion affects decisions at every level of life. A talented person may avoid sharing their ideas because they fear criticism. An artist may hide their work because they assume people will judge it harshly. A young entrepreneur may postpone starting a project because they worry about how failure will look in front of others. These fears feel intense because the imagined audience seems powerful, yet that audience is usually too busy dealing with their own struggles to care deeply about someone else's risks. The reality becomes clearer when observing everyday behavior. Walk through any busy street and notice how people move. Each person carries a private world inside their mind. One person may be thinking about an upcoming deadline. Another may be calculating expenses in their head. Someone else may be remembering an argument that happened earlier in the day. Others may simply be trying to reach their destination quickly. In the middle of all this mental activity, very few people stop to analyze the choices of strangers. This pattern repeats across workplaces, schools, and social environments. People worry about their own performance. They measure their own progress. They think about how they appear to others. Ironically, everyone is concerned about being judged, while very few people are actually judging others as closely as imagined. This shared misunderstanding creates a strange situation where millions of individuals limit themselves because they fear attention that barely exists. The illusion slowly shapes behavior over years. A person might choose a safe career path instead of following a passion because they fear criticism. Someone might hide their ambitions because they worry about being misunderstood. Another person might remain silent even when they have valuable ideas because they fear embarrassment. These choices accumulate over time. Small hesitations become habits. The habit of hesitation eventually becomes a lifestyle. This is why understanding the spotlight effect is so powerful. It exposes the illusion that keeps many people trapped. Once the illusion becomes visible, its power begins to fade. A person starts to notice how little attention others actually give to their daily actions. They realize that people are mostly focused on their own lives. This realization may feel uncomfortable at first. It can sound harsh. It may even feel lonely. The mind may initially interpret it as a sign that the world is indifferent, but a deeper perspective reveals something very different. The lack of constant attention is not a punishment, it is freedom. When the imaginary spotlight disappears, a person suddenly gains space to act without fear. They gain permission to experiment, to fail, and to learn without feeling constantly observed. This freedom changes how decisions are made. Instead of asking what others will think, the mind begins asking a more productive question. Am I improving? This single shift redirects attention inward. Growth becomes the focus rather than reputation. Effort replaces performance. Discipline replaces validation. The individual stops performing for an audience and begins building for themselves. This shift leads directly to another important realization. If people are mostly focused on their own lives, then waiting for them to care deeply about your dreams may be unrealistic. No one wakes up early thinking about someone else's goals. No one sacrifices their time and energy to build another person's future. Every individual is responsible for carrying their own weight. This truth may sound harsh at first, but it reflects the basic structure of reality. Each life is its own project. Each person must invest effort into shaping their path. Expecting someone else to rescue your ambitions often leads to disappointment. Waiting for approval before taking action often leads to stagnation. The world continues moving regardless of individual hesitation. Time does not pause while someone waits for encouragement. Opportunities do not remain available forever. Progress belongs to those who decide to move forward, even when attention is absent. Accepting this truth requires maturity. It requires letting go of the hope that someone else will create the perfect conditions for success. It requires understanding that growth begins with personal responsibility. Once this understanding settles in the mind, something remarkable happens. The individual stops waiting. Energy that was once wasted on worrying about opinions returns to productive use. Instead of monitoring how others react, attention shifts towards self-improvement. Discipline becomes more valuable than approval. Effort becomes more meaningful than recognition. This transformation may not produce immediate applause. In fact, it often happens quietly. Progress begins behind the scenes. Hours are invested in learning new skills. Time is dedicated to improving health and strengthening the mind. Mistakes happen along the way, but they no longer carry the same emotional weight because the imagined audience has disappeared. The individual understands that failure is simply part of growth, rather than a public spectacle. This quiet approach creates what can be called the silent advantage. While many people compete for attention, a smaller group focuses on development. They spend less time announcing their intentions and more time executing them. Their energy remains concentrated rather than scattered. While others argue about opinions and comparisons, they continue improving their craft. While others wait for motivation to appear, they rely on discipline to carry them forward. Discipline is less dramatic than motivation. It does not rely on emotional excitement. It relies on consistency. It shows up even when attention is absent. Over time, discipline compounds into results. Skills sharpen. Confidence grows naturally because it is built on real effort rather than external validation. The person begins to notice that progress itself becomes rewarding.
Approval becomes less important because self-respect begins to grow internally. This internal shift changes how the world is perceived. Criticism loses much of its power because it no longer defines identity. Praise also loses some of its influence because it is no longer necessary for motivation. The individual becomes stable. Their direction comes from within rather than from the reactions of others. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly scanning the environment for judgment. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by personal values rather than social pressure. This mindset does not remove challenges from life. Difficult moments still occur. Failure still appears from time to time, but these experiences are no longer interpreted as public humiliation. They are simply lessons within a personal journey. Progress continues quietly. Day by day, the person moves further away from the life once controlled by imagined opinions. They become focused. They become disciplined. They become independent in their thinking. Over time, the transformation becomes visible, even if it was never announced. Results begin to speak. Skills become obvious. Confidence becomes natural, rather than forced. The person who once feared judgment now moves with quiet certainty. They no longer waste energy trying to prove themselves to everyone around them. Their focus remains directed toward growth and improvement. This journey begins with a simple realization. The realization that the spotlight was never as bright as the mind believed. The realization that people are mostly focused on themselves. The realization that waiting for attention is a poor strategy for building a meaningful life. Once these truths settle into the mind, behavior begins to change naturally. Instead of chasing attention, the individual begins chasing growth. Instead of overthinking opinions, they invest energy in discipline. Instead of performing for approval, they build a life based on self-respect, focus, and inner control. And slowly a powerful understanding forms. The day a person fully accepts that nobody is watching closely is the day they finally gain the courage to move without fear. The day they stop seeking constant approval is the day they begin building a life that truly belongs to them. The day the imaginary spotlight fades is the day they step forward with a different kind of strength. A strength that grows quietly but steadily, guided not by attention but by purpose.
Silence reveals a truth that many people spend years trying to avoid. The world keeps moving, whether someone watches or not. The crowd that once seemed so powerful slowly fades when a person begins focusing on their own path. Attention stops being the goal. Growth becomes the mission. The pressure to impress disappears, and in its place comes a quiet determination to improve day by day. Life begins to feel lighter when approval is no longer required for every step forward. Decisions become clearer. Confidence grows naturally. Effort becomes more important than recognition. And the energy that was once wasted worrying about opinions returns to something far more valuable, building a stronger mind, a stronger life, and a stronger future. The truth you discovered in this video is simple but powerful. Most people are not thinking about your life. They are busy thinking about their own. That realization may sound harsh at first, but it carries a hidden gift. It gives you the freedom to move without fear, to take risks without hesitation, and to improve without constantly looking over your shoulder. When a person stops chasing attention, they begin chasing progress. When they stop waiting for approval, they start building discipline. And when discipline becomes part of everyday life, change begins to appear in ways that once seemed impossible. The difference between people who stay stuck and people who move forward is often not talent, luck, or opportunity. It is focus. One group keeps looking around, measuring themselves against the reactions of others. The other group looks inward and asks a better question every day. Am I improving? That single question shifts the direction of life. Because when attention turns toward growth instead of validation, progress becomes inevitable. Small improvements start stacking together. A stronger mindset begins to form. Confidence becomes quiet but unshakable. Remember this simple truth as you move forward. You do not need everyone to believe in you. You do not need constant praise to continue your journey. You do not need permission to become better. The only thing required is the willingness to focus on your own path and keep improving, even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. Because the strongest transformations often happen in silence, far away from applause, far away from recognition. They happen when a person decides that their future is more important than other people's opinions. So if this video shifted the way you see life, take that understanding with you and start applying it today. Focus on your discipline, Focus on your mindset. Focus on the habits that quietly shape your future. And if you want more ideas that challenge the way you think and help you build real mental strength, make sure you subscribe to the channel. This channel is dedicated to discipline, clarity, and the kind of thinking that leads to true self-mastery. Not empty motivation that fades tomorrow, but ideas that stay with you and change how you approach life. If you found value in this video, take a moment to like it. That simple action helps this message reach more people who might be struggling with the same pressures and illusions. And if someone you know spends too much time worrying about what others think, share this video with them. It might be the perspective they need to finally focus on themselves and move forward with confidence. Thank you for spending this time here and investing it in your own growth. Keep building your mind, keep sharpening your discipline, and keep moving forward with focus and purpose. I will see you in the next video.